Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. The decisions we make regarding the risks we'll expose ourselves to are guided by several different sources of data, one of which is the types and cost of insurance to protect us and our assets. There are times when the lack of coverage creates stress, and adequate coverage creates comfort. We'll be talking about insurance up next on this episode of the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Welcome to this week's Psych, Health, and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So, insurance coverage can have a significant psychological impact on us. Knowing that you have insurance coverage can alleviate stress and anxiety related to potential medical expenses. The sense of security can improve overall mental well-being. Insurance coverage often includes access to mental health services, which can be crucial for individuals dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. On the flip side, inadequate insurance coverage or high out-of-pocket costs can lead to financial strain, which can exacerbate stress and negatively impact our mental health. Some insurance plans have limited networks or require extensive paperwork, creating barriers to accessing necessary care. This can lead to frustration and feelings of helplessness. Mental health conditions can affect life insurance coverage and pricing, which can add to the stress and anxiety of individuals dealing with these conditions. So I've discussed, or I'm talking about insurance really kind of from a medical perspective, but the same thing applies to coverage for our vehicles, coverage for our homes, coverage for our businesses. All of these connections to insurance and the level of stress and concern that we feel, they're real for us. And I honestly don't know a lot about insurance. I have it. I've had it for years. I've been insured for many, many more years than I want to admit here on the podcast. But I thought we'd have a conversation about insurance. And particularly the conversation, hopefully will lead us into some connections between how can we use insurance or use our insurance coverage to help us feel better? Or how can we use insurance to minimize some of the stressors that exist in, in having a business or running an enterprise. So I thought I'd get somebody on here who knows what they're talking about. And I'm going to, we're going to get into this conversation with the type of question that I typically ask, where I have our guest, instead of me trying to introduce people, I look for an introduction of my guest by my guest. And in this case, with this question: who is Marcus Rasberry?
Well, good morning, Dr. Daniels. Thank you so much for having me on the broadcast on today. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the psychological effect of safety and health from a personal standpoint when it comes to personal insurance and also commercial. It plagues our country. People don't understand the background of how it works or how to deal with it on an ongoing basis. So we're going to discuss that. I've worked in different industries from healthcare all the way down to theme parks, working at Walt Disney World, to working in the actual insurance arena currently for Amerisure Insurance, where I'm a risk management specialist currently with Amerisure Insurance. So we can look at it from all different facets, from leisure insurance to health insurance, all the way down to commercial insurance. So, whichever way we want to go with this particular topic, we're able to discuss that on today. So, thank you so much again, Dr. Danes, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. One standard question, and this is the standard question I ask everyone who comes on. So, what does psychological health and safety mean to you?
Well, it means a lot, especially in the current industry in which I currently work in. We have to look at the psychology of the individual. One of the ways that we look at that is through a program called behavior based safety, where we look at the behaviors of individuals, and those behaviors, such as attitudes towards safety and risk, are going to determine how a person acts in a job environment. And so we not only focus on safety at work or risk at work, but we also look at it from a home environment as well. Because if you're not safe at home, you're probably not going to be safe on the job. So it's just like using, cutting your grass at home and not using, eye protection and hearing protection. Well, guess what? When you come to work, you more than likely going to forget your hearing protection and your eye protection because you're not used to doing it because you don't do it at home. So we have to look at it from a cohesive standpoint of how we look at and manage risk on the job and at home. So a lot of our trainings, focus in on when it comes to behavior-based safety on what are you doing at home? How safe are you at home when it comes to driving your personal vehicle? That makes a difference. If you drive your personal vehicle, where you're exceeding the speed limit when you're on the weekend, just cruising with your family, then that's going to translate to when you come to work, exceeding the speed limit in the company vehicle. So we have to look at it not just from a work perspective, but we have to look at it from a home perspective as well, and making sure that at 24/7 that you're, operating in a safe manner, that you're acknowledging, hey, the risks that are out there, and how do you even mitigate those risks from home and at work.
Yeah, you're making this very interesting argument, and I have to say I'm into it. In terms of making the connection, you can't separate what goes on at home from what goes on at work. People will say, "Oh, just leave that at home." Well, you can't, because a lot of the discussions around psychological safety in the last few years have kind of revolved around this discussion about being able to bring my whole self. Well, you it's I always bring my whole self. I mean, there's no way to separate part of me. I don't leave part of me at home and part of me come to work. They both come to work. And sometimes those behaviors that I bring into the workplace can cause, potential harm to me or other people. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, but it does mean that behavior may not be compatible with the work environment. So it's just really important to be able to understand that, particularly when we're talking about aspects of either psychological or physical safety. Just be able to understand people are whole people all the time. It doesn't stop. I mean, it it just doesn't stop. And we can't expect, like I said, we can't expect a person just take off the stress that's going on at home when we come to work, to take off the fact that I don't think that's really important. So when I come to work, I don't think it's important either, because that's just me. And that's where this dialogue and conversation is so important about, well, and again, I really hesitate to say that these are good or bad behaviors. They're just behaviors that could increase risk. That's where this whole risk management conversation comes in. It's not that it's not bad to drive fast. It's bad to drive fast in a situation where you could either be harmed or harmed other people. So sometimes driving a little bit faster is a good idea to be able to create a, when I'm driving on the highway, I expose some of my driving behaviors. I really don't like people driving around me. I don't. I like to create this kind of pocket, around me so I can, I don't tailgate because I don't like cars in front of me. It's not. So sometimes I'll speed up a little bit to get somebody off my tail or move into another lane because I want to create that space around me. So it's not that speeding's not good or bad. Speeding is a behavior. And sometimes the way people do it and the time they do it creates risk. And the question is, do you want to accept the potential harm from that risk you just took? That's really it.
And one of the things, just to piggyback off what you're saying, one of the things that I train and teach on for a lot of our clients is defensive driving. That's one of them. And distracted driving is the second part of it. And so just think about, say, for instance, you're driving, you're at work, and you get that phone call from your wife, and she's upset about something that happened before you left home. And next thing you know, you get in an argument. Now you're in a company vehicle, work vehicle, driving to a location, and you get this phone call, and you're all upset, you all raveled, your head is about to explode because of what he or she is saying. Guess what? You're not going to be paying attention to what's going on, versus not having that conversation, or having that conversation once you get to wherever you're trying to go to. So one of the things we talk about is distracted driving. How many times have we all had a conversation with someone call, and it's an unpleasant ordeal or something to talk about that is not, I wasn't expecting this. I don't want to deal with this right now, but yet still you deal with it because you feel some type of sense of urgency that you have to take the call. And I'm talking about from a personal standpoint. And you know that it's not going to go so pleasant. And what we found out is, number one, you're distracted by that phone call. Number two, sometimes you end up at your location and you're like, man, how did I get here so quick? I don't even remember that I got here. Why? Because you were so enthralled in the conversation that you had that you didn't pay attention of where you were going and how you got there. So we can't, like you said earlier, you can't separate the two, because it happens on a daily basis. It's all about managing that risk. Holding off that phone call until you get to your location or get to a safe destination in which you can take that phone call and focus in on it. Does that phone call have to be taken in the car while you're driving? And the answer is no. No, it doesn't. A lot of my clients implement a policy, a no cell phone policy while driving the vehicle, which is perfect. Because we realize that most rear-end collisions come from distracted driving. Someone with a cell phone, someone having a conversation, with regards to driving the vehicle. And let me bring this point up really quick. People don't realize that when it comes to commercial auto insurance, that it affects your personal auto insurance. And the reason why I say that is because when the commercial industry, such as right now, is catching a cold, then your personal auto is going to catch COVID. Let's be honest. When the commercial policy is going up, 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 and up because of all these commercial accidents that are happening, and the industry catches a cold like we have right now, your personal policy is going to catch COVID, meaning that it's going to go up, based upon people driving erratically, getting a lot of accidents in commercial vehicles because a lot of these commercial companies they own the personal lines as well in different parts of it. So we have to be cognizant of it one. You can't separate one without the other. You need both of them, and the insurance industry as a whole is just on fire. No insurance company in North America is making money when it comes to auto. It's just that bad. And the whole purpose of insurance company is to make what? Money on your insurance policy. Nobody's making money. They're paying out a lot of claims, and that effect is going to trickle down to your personal coverage as well. So keep that in mind.
Hmm. Wow. So yeah, let's put a pin in that because that's hopefully that's a motivator. When I talk about safety in general, I heard some time ago that people tend to engage in safety related behaviors for one of three reasons. Not One reason is they believe it's the right thing to do. Another reason is they believe it's going to save them some money. The third reason is they do it because they have to. And as a safety professional, it doesn't matter to me what people's motivation is personally. Doesn't matter. I believe that safety is so important that whatever motivates you to do it, you should do it. But the point that you brought up tends to be one that motivates people is when it starts to affect their financial condition. Sometimes that motivates people to behave differently. And I really like the kind of where we're going, making this connection, that sometimes people think that I can go to work and kind of do whatever. This is looking at it from the other side. Oh, when I go to work, I'll just do whatever, but I do it better when I'm at home. Well, but they're connected. They're connected. So again, the extent to which you can put some things in place in advance that says, look, let's have a process that says if it's a true emergency, you'll do this. Other than that, you just won't hear from me when, we'll try to keep them as separate as possible, except under these circumstances. There's some planning that we could do in advance rather than, although they do go together, we can manage these environments a little bit differently because the risk from one can bleed over to the other. And again, while I'm having a conversation about risk, what in the world got you interested in risk management in general? Were you like a 3-year-old who's trying to figure out, the vehicle insurance coverage? So how did you become interested in risk management?
Yeah, so I've been in risk management going on 10 years now, overall in the safety and risk industry of 20 years. And it was interesting how I got into the risk side of things working for the insurance company. In fact, I was working at Walt Disney World in their safety department when I got the opportunity to come and work for Amerisure Insurance through a good friend of mine who was a part of ASSP and American Society of Safety Professionals. And he presented me the opportunity to come and work for the insurance side of it. He thought I was a great fit to work in insurance as a consultant. And 10 years later, I'm still doing the same thing. So I call it a calling. I strongly believe that I'm called to do what I'm doing right now with regards to helping companies and corporations and individuals with their safety and health program and help managing their risks. I really believe that that's something that I've been put here on earth to do from that perspective to be able to save lives, save property, and help educate people more than anything else in regards to getting them to change their behaviors and their attitudes towards safety. I feel like it's a part of my life story, what I'm doing right now.
Wow. Wow. Well, yes. Some are called, but few are chosen. So, chat a little bit about. So, if you had someone who had never heard of the concept of risk management before, how would you describe that risk management to somebody who just has no idea what it is?
Yeah, and risk and people try to put together risk and safety, and you have to be careful of doing that because there are two totally different concepts. Okay, and so risk is concerned with dealing with an uncertain future, whereas safety is concerned with dealing with your current conditions. And that is the biggest difference between risk and safety. And so I like the risk side of it more than the safety side of it because I want to be able to be proactive and get ahead of the unforeseen future that may arise in any type of situation. And so that's why I like the risk side of it because safety, you somewhat behind the eight ball, something is already occurring and you have to do something about it. Whereas the risk side of it, I can get ahead of. I can see based on loss analysis, based on statistics, I can see what direction you're going down and I can prevent you from hitting a brick wall. And that's why I like the risk side versus the safety side of it because I can tell you, I can look at your fleet and say, okay, with all these accidents you've had in the past, this year you're, more likely going to have these many accidents unless you change your programming, unless you implement more training, and help change the attitudes of your drivers for your company. Same thing with accidents. Most people don't come to work saying, hey, I'm going to get an accident today. But what happens is they have all these near misses that occur on a daily basis that they go around or don't acknowledge. And those near misses that occur on the job, they happen at home too. How many times you see something on the floor, you tell your kids to pick that up before you trip. Pick that up, before something happens and they don't do it. And the next thing you know, they trip and fall. Same thing happens at work. When you don't get ahead of those near misses and tracking them and doing something about it, then more than likely you're going to end up getting injured on the job. And so it's just like a puddle of water being on the floor in a warehouse. And 10 people walk around the puddle of water. And that 11th person, they just walk through it. It's been there. We knew about it, but we didn't do anything about it. That's the difference between analyzing risk versus safety, because oftentimes in safety, stuff has already occurred. You're looking at lagging indicators and not leading indicators. And all that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you describe your view of risk and risk management. And when I hear you describe it, you still sound like a safety guy to me. And here's why I say that is so again to take a similar but slightly different approach to it. I actually believe that risk and safety are just two ends of the same spectrum. And it just depends on which side it's almost spherical because you can't really be successful at one unless you do the other. And whether, you know, uh, risk should be involved in both lagging and leading indicators, and safety should also be involved in leading and lagging indicators. It just depends on which conversation we're having. I didn't know much about risk in general until I got the opportunity to work, frankly, at the city of Atlanta as the executive director of workforce safety for the city. And the function itself was driven by risk related folks, but their focus tended, not all the time, but tended to me to be more addressed on the lagging indicator side. But the problem was, if you're all lagging indicator, that's all you ever end up with, and you never really get back to see what's causing this. But on the other hand, you can't just do leading indicators all the time because you got to get data from someplace. You can't just imagine what past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. It just is. So so again, it's this big, as opposed to a linear type of thing, it's a big circular thing that when you end one, you're kind of starting the other all the time. And you can get on at whatever point you want to get on, but risk and safety. And the other way I describe it is that all risk, and this is, kind of my view of it, risk is the product of exposure to a hazard that you're vulnerable to. There's something that is a potential hazard. And that's something I think people all don't pay a lot of attention to is what are we trying to protect people from? I mean, so that pile of rags over there and that can of gasoline are fine as long as they don't get too close together. It's not that they're independently bad things. We got to have the rags to be able to clean the equipment, and we need the gasoline to be able to fuel it. But when we put them too close together, that's where the risk occurs, because it's just kind of, it's physics, heat, fuel, oxygen, and a chemical reaction, you're going to get a fire. So again, like I said, I really, when I hear you describe risk management, I still hear, I still hear the safety guy in there. I really do. I really do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Dr. Nance, you are absolutely correct. They should be, depending upon where a company is at in their journey when it comes to safety, it should evolve into risk as well. Inputting risk into their safety program, because one cannot live without the other, right? But what happens is, in most cases, especially with a lot of our insurers, is that they only focus on the safety side of it. Now, understanding that there's a risk side of it too, if we can use both at the same time, then you can be a lot further along in your journey in reducing loss and also reducing liabilities. So that's where we have to get to from a commercial standpoint when it comes to the commercial insurance side. That if you go to most commercial insurance companies, I'm sorry, not insurance companies, but most of our insurers, if I can pull up 10 right now, let's just take out 10 that's maybe in my portfolio. Most of them are going to have safety managers, not risk managers, because they haven't got to the point to understand that you need both of them. And so the companies that have, hey, I have a risk manager and I have a safety manager, those are the companies that are so far down the road in their journey when it comes to managing their safety and risk, that they're the ones that are in that 1% club of having, going million or 2 million or 5 million man hours without an incident, because they're managing their safety and risk programs at the same time. And so when I stated earlier about risk being one thing, the unforeseen, future, which can be uncertain, versus safety, dealing with the current conditions, you have to deal with both of them. And what makes the insurance company so unique with people like myself that are risk consultants or risk specialists, that's currently my title. We are able to forecast where a company is headed, using analytics, and every insurance company has an actuarial department to where we can pinpoint exactly which direction the company is going into, and that's how we're able to say, okay, we want to bring this risk on, or we don't want to bring this risk on, based upon what the past showed us already, right? What they're doing right now, and what we think they're going to do in the future. And so the same thing when it comes to your personal lines with your vehicle and driving. Every insurance company has an actuarial department that's going to look at, okay, what's your past driving behaviors, right? Same thing with health insurance. Hey, how often do you go to the doctor? How many, are you running $1 million a year in insurance costs, right? So all that makes a difference, but every insurance company, whether it's on the commercial side or personal lines, they're going to be able to pinpoint the risk that they're bringing on before they bring it on, and be able to make a decision towards, hey, is this a good risk to bring on or not? And commercial companies should be doing the same thing. Even individuals should be analyzing themselves from a risk perspective and saying, hey, am I a good risk? Am I being healthy? Am I doing all things I need to do to be able to take care of myself, to make sure that I'm going to be insurable, down the road, or even come renewal. So it makes a difference. All of that makes a difference, but you have to do something. And that's the whole key. Are you doing what's necessary to be able to get the, because we have to have insurance. That's one industry that does not go down, is insurance, because even if the economy goes down and you still paying those insurance premiums, what do I do to make sure that I'm still able to be insurable? And also, what am I doing futuristically to maintain, my status? And there's different things that you can do. From a driving perspective, which is a hot button topic right now. A lot of companies are going to what they call GPS telematics in vehicles. From a personal standpoint, there is called UBI, usage based insurance, but insurance companies are able to monitor, how you drive and where you drive and how many miles you're actually doing per year. So all of that makes a difference. If you want to get lower costs, it's some things that you have to implement and do. in order to show the insurance company that you willing to perform at even a greater rate or better than you did in the previous year. And that's what it's all about, is getting better day by day, month by month, year by year.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the Flourish DX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow Flourish DX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the Flourish DX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
Yeah, and again, as I'm hearing you talk about this, I harken back to the statement I made a little bit earlier. Organizations tend to have safety-related people because they have to. I mean, particularly private employers. We have a thing called the Occupational Safety and Health Act that places a responsibility on an organization to ensure that those workers are not, exposed to harm from recognizable hazards. That's what the law says. And so you kind of have to pay attention. And then there's the requirement to file certain reporting when people are injured. That's things that people have to do. And sometimes people don't, again, they have kind of an incomplete awareness of the issue. Don't just do it because you have to do it. What are you doing to be ahead of it? And this is where this conversation about risk comes up. There are some things, and even if you're, and again, they're all three connected. If you want to save yourself some money, don't have the injury in the first place. Don't have the vehicle collision in the first place. Don't have the exposure. Don't have the lawsuit in advance, and then you won't have to spend the money on it. You can spend that money on something else. You can spend it on, expanding your physical plant, hiring more people, whatever, because you're kind of not wasting, but you're spending money right now on things that could be prevented if you simply identified, well, do I want to continue to expose people to that thing? And so I there's a corollary here, because most of our conversation right now, we're talking about physical things, and this is the psychological health and safety conversation. But this also applies to how people feel kind of emotionally. People, they'll sign up and become a member of your organization and bring their talents and do their job. But if you stress them out, overwork them, burn them out, you're not going to be able to keep that person. You're going to have to find a new person, which is going to cost you even more money. Your efficiency is going to go down. There's all these kinds of issues. And that is a risk that could be identified and prevented. Do we have to stress people out at work? Not always. We don't have to. We do sometimes because we just hadn't thought about it. We kind of normalized, you were talking about those rear end collisions because of distraction. But, people also, one of the distractions may be the fact that I was given a route of things to deliver today that I just absolutely can't do. I mean, I can't. So why do we keep giving, 15 stops to this guy and then wonder why he clipped a mailbox on the 12th one? Because we gave him too many to go to in the first place. And there's data out there to suggest that once we start giving X amount of work, that our vehicle collisions go up, that our property damage is going up. So again, all of this stuff is connected. It's just not separate. It is connected. And a lot of the data is out there, but people just aren't really paying attention to the data.
Yeah, you brought up a great point when it comes to hiring individuals, right? And one of the things that a lot of HR people, they know these statistics, but a lot of companies don't really dive into it, is that it costs on average $5,000 to hire someone and onboard that particular individual. In my past life, I worked with clients that had 100% turnover year after year within the organization. And you think about, let's say on a small end, 5,000 times, let's say 100 people, how much money that just went out the door because you refuse to change to be able to keep the people that you do have. And so we have to look at that from an organization standpoint, is looking at, okay, what are my long-term employees? Who are they? Why do they stay here within the organization versus, the other individuals that jump from job to job? If you pay them 50 cents more, they're gone, right? If they have a better work-life balance, they're gone. So really looking into how can you have the work-life balance, because that's the hot button topic right now. People are leaving jobs because they're looking for that particular employment that's going to give them the work-life balance that they're seeking. That's why when we had the pandemic happening, people were retiring, people were jumping ship, people were just leaving because they finally realized that, hey, I have to have some type of work-life balance going forward. That's why gig jobs, increased substantially, during the COVID period of time, because people realized that, hey, I can make more money in a short amount of time and do it the way I want to do it, versus someone standing over my shoulder telling me what to do every 5 minutes. So we have to look at it from a psychological perspective. How do I retain, good people? Doing surveys and figuring out what our people like and don't like. From a safety and risk standpoint, having those safety committee meetings where people can voice how the company can get better and what we need to implement. Because when you empower, your employees to make decisions, then they feel like they're part of the leadership program and process. But when you don't arm your employees, especially your frontline employees, with, hey, I'm a part of the team, I'm a part of the decision making process, then it makes a difference. It makes a difference because everyone wants to have an input. We're not dealing with the times of the 70s and the 60s where you do what the boss tell you to do and that's it. People have opinions. People are going to say, what their opinion is, to be able to further advance the organization. And so we have to look at that. And so oftentimes when I go and meet with a lot of my clients, I ask the question when I go to the safety committee meeting, or I meet with a group of individuals doing toolbox talks and things of that nature before the shift starts. One question I ask, hey, who's the safety manager? Who's the risk manager? Everybody look around and they point to one person and say, she is or he is. And from that brief question in that conversation, when they point to one person, I realized that those employees have no empowerment. But when I go into other organizations and ask the same question, hey, who's in charge of safety? Who's in charge of risk? Everybody raised their hand and said, hey, we all are a part of the risk and safety program. We all are in charge of the risk and safety program for the organization. And that is an organization that you're going to see that's going to manage the program, that's going to challenge their fellow employees by saying, hey, you can't use that ladder like that, or you have to use PPE in order to operate this machinery. It's gonna come from the frontline employees, where the frontline employees are directing the entire organization when it comes to safety, not from the CEO down, which a lot of organizations that are behind the eight ball, that's how they pretty much operate, where they're waiting on the CEO to give them direction when it comes to the safety program, when it should be the other way around. So just keep that in mind from the standpoint of, how do we change the morale in the organization? How do we change the psychology in the organization? It's going to come from those frontline employees that you empower in order to be able to lead the culture in the organization when it comes to risk and safety.
Wow. 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 This is not the kind of conversation that people would think you would have with an insurance guy. Seriously, because as I said in the beginning, I have insurance coverage. As a matter of fact, my agent's actually pretty decent. And we've had a few of these kind of conversations, but I think sometimes people have kind of pigeonholed the idea of insurance is simply, well, it's something I have to pay for, but does it really have an impact on my life or my business or my home, or it really doesn't have much of an impact. So for those who might, kind of see it that way, as we, start to wrap the conversation, what in your view, and again, this is from someone who's in the industry, so what are some of the psychological benefits of knowing that you're protected? How does that? What would you tell people about how, the connection between the two?
So when you think about the psychological benefits of an organization and how a person feels, because we all know that perception is reality in most cases when it comes to different individuals. And so how a person perceives a company, their work life, what they're doing, is their reality. And you have to do something in order to change a person's perspective. Number one, show that you care, that you're concerned. When I go to an organization, I'm always asking, hey, I meet with a lot of CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and ask not only how they're doing, but how's your family? How's your daughter doing in school? To show that I'm here to evaluate your risk program, but I'm also care too. And because of that, I've had relationships with a lot of different companies for years because of it's personal with me. I'm concerned about not just the business aspect, but I'm also concerned about the individual as well. Same thing within an organization. If you show the person that you care, then that person is going to break their backs to try to help the organization and grow the organization from their perspective. So the psychology behind being able to further enhance the risk and safety program, to further enhance morale, to further enhance the culture of the company, it comes from a standpoint of, does the company actually care about my well-being? Does the company, something as simple as, do they provide, boots? OSHA says that you don't have to pay for boots. It's a fringe benefit for that person because they can use it outside of work. But hey, does a company say, I want to make sure that my employees' feet are protected each year? I want to make sure they have a brand new pair of boots. That goes a long way when it comes to, hey, they remember that. You can give a person a safety bonus every year of, let's say, $100 for being safe and not getting any accidents, which is great. It's like, yeah, I got $100 at Christmas time. But if you come and tell them, each week or each day, hey, I like what you did, how you operate that machinery, how you trained Bob, and you didn't have to do it, but you went the extra mile, they're gonna remember that more than $100 they got at Christmas time, because that behavior they want to be constantly reinforced. Versus the only time the boss even comes to the employee is when something is wrong. And when something is wrong, it's like, yeah, Bob, you messed that equipment up again. You messed this up. You messed that up, because that's going to continuously run and play in that person's mind, to the point that they're like, you know what? I can't take, my boss. All he does is harp down my throat. I can do 100 things right. He never notices it. But every time I do something wrong, he has something to say. And then that person, guess what? Is going to end up leaving that organization over time because of a bad boss. And that's what happens. People don't leave jobs because of the job. They leave because of the leader that they have to report to. So, leaders have to be able to understand, how to get the most and the best out of the employee. And just by telling them, hey, you're doing a good job, goes a long way. You don't have to even give them a raise in that moment. But just telling them, hey, keep doing what you're doing, because guess what? That person is going to repeat that behavior because they like the motivation that it gave them and the feeling that it gave them for doing their particular task or job.
Yeah. Again, you're making this connection again. The loop back to the discussion about, why, from your perspective as a risk manager, that behaviors are important. So I think what I just heard you describe is that, the leadership, the culture of the organization can incentivize behaviors that are safer, that are less risky. You incentivize it, and it didn't cost you a nickel. All it didn't cost you nothing. It was free. All you had to do was encourage the person to do something that is in both their interest and the interest of the company. Just that. And so, again, sometimes when I talk about this whole psychological health and safety thing, people get, well, it's going to cost us a lot of money to bring in a bunch of consultants and that. No, it's not. It's not really all that complicated. The fixes are pretty simple. Simply encourage people. You're the employer. You started this business. You hired this person. Reinforcing things that are safe for them, that are also safe for you. Reinforcing things that are positive, that are uplifting, kind of reinforcing those things. And the more you reinforce it, the more they do it, the less risky behaviors they engage in. It's just, again, it's all connected. But on the other hand, the yelling and screaming and disciplining people and being dictatorial and autocratic, that doesn't make the problem go away. It actually makes the problem worse because people are operating out of fear. They're operating out of this, and that fear and stress also, causes them not to pay attention to the other things they're supposed to do. So again, it's all connected. It's all connected. It's really absolutely connected. Being kind and being caring for other people and being positive and uplifting, it sounds like it has an insurance benefit.
It does, because we've seen the studies and statistics that show that companies that focus on behavior-based safety, meaning that you're trying to change the attitudes and behaviors of people within the organization, has a direct correlation to people getting in accidents and incidents. And my whole job is to reduce those from happening. So, a lot of training that I currently do, that I'm really focused in on, is management accountability. How are the managers accountable for the risk and safety of the individuals that they manage?
So Marcus, as we start to wrap, let's talk a little bit about how the connection between having adequate insurance coverage, having a good kind of risk management related, conversation with an insurance provider. How does that help me feel better? I mean, how does that help lift a little bit of the load, or what's the kind of the
Yeah,
emotional
so
benefit of being covered
it
well?
makes a difference when you have, number one, placed yourself in a position to have adequate amount of coverage. So keep that in mind, that some people are not in a position to get the coverage that they need, whether it's from healthcare, whether it's from auto, whether it's from property, the home that they have. And the reason why they can't get adequate amount of coverage is because of past behaviors. And so remember, you said it earlier that past behaviors, dictate, the future outcomes. So being able to look at your current situation, which we talked about as safety, and being able to forecast from a risk standpoint of view, how do I change my future outcomes based upon how I operate currently, will get you the outcomes that you're looking for. And so, say for instance, when it comes to car insurance, they're not going to give you an umbrella, let's say, of 300,000, if you've had, three car accidents last year. So you got to change that perspective on and having accidents. And the question always comes up with me, are all accidents preventable? And I can say yes. I can say yes. All accidents are preventable, whether by the other person or by you. They are preventable, right? So we have to make sure that we are doing our part at least. And we know some stuff just happens where you're not at fault. We're not talking about the stuff that you're not at fault for, but the stuff that you are at fault for. You can prevent those things from happening, even from a health standpoint. Eating better and making sure you're taking time to meditate and relax and not being as stressful or stressed out. It makes a difference long term on your health, your ability to maintain your health and to operate at a higher level, so that you can get the coverages that you're looking for, even from a personal standpoint, even from a house standpoint. You may have to make some updates on your house, get a new roof, and get, if you live in Florida, get shutters that cover the windows and things of that nature. All that makes a difference in your assurability, going forward. So what are you doing to put yourself in that place? looking at the gaps, because you may have some unforeseen gaps in your life and how you operate that you didn't know of. Because some people think they have one coverage and they don't until something happens. Like, I thought I had that. I thought I had uninsured motors. I thought I had comp and collision. And come to find out you didn't have it because you're not looking at the details. You're not looking at, your policy. You're not looking at what the fine print says, because I heard someone say a long time ago that the devil's in the details. So we have to make sure we're looking at the details, looking at what's required of you to be able to maximize the coverages that you currently have or want to have in the future.
Right. Yeah, I think I may have come to the conclusion over the course of time that life is a series of risk management decisions. It is. It's constantly kind of deciding that, you know, if I do this thing, this is the hazard I'll be exposed to. Here's the associated risk, and do I want to accept that risk or not? Or do I want to share that risk with, with some sort of financial instrument or with another person? It's all risk management decisions, our entire lives, because we do have choices to make, but the choices we make today have a lot to do with, some of the consequences we're going to have to accept tomorrow. So again, thanks for this kind of insurance 101. Like I said, people sometimes may see a lot of different parts of their life as disconnected. Is that I found out when I moved into the community where I live now that a lot of folks moved here from other places in the country where housing was more expensive. They move here and they buy a house cash, and they don't insure it at all. They don't insure it at all. And again, I'm not one to make a value judgment. I'm not saying that's good or bad. The question is, do you want to accept the consequence of that decision that you've made? So if you are 100% sure that there's not going to be a hurricane, there's not going to be a tornado, there's not going to be a fire, and you want to take that risk, okay, that is an option that you have. But then there's another way that says, well, because of the things that I cannot, control that might happen, it might be a better idea for me to invest a little bit to be able to protect this asset. Again, these are simply risk management decisions. That's what they are, Yeah, and there's a part of me that also says, and after it goes, if you've made a decision that's going to cause you consequence you don't want, it becomes difficult sometimes for me to jump in and help you later. The relative that says, well, I didn't insure this. Can you help me now? There's a part of me that says, well, I'm not sure if I can do that.
I used to live in Florida, and that happened all the time where people didn't have coverage. And then here comes the hurricane. And then they're like, I need to get coverage. I don't think I have coverage. I don't have the adequate amount. And it's like it's too late, because now once you get in the cone of that hurricane, once it gets a certain amount, towards land, from land rather, nobody, no carrier, nobody in the state of Florida can insure you at that point. You're gonna have to suffer the consequences, or whatever that storm may do, at that point in time, because you didn't think about it ahead of time, or you didn't look into it ahead of time, and that makes a difference. And you can't call for calm, while you're in the midst of the storm. The time before the storm comes is when you have to prepare and get ready for the calmness you can have even in the midst of the storm. By being prepared ahead of time. Are you prepared ahead of time, or you like those people that, hey, just wait to the last minute? And like, it worked out for you before, but in certain instances it may not work out. And what do you do in case of?
Right. Yeah, I recall there's a passage in the good book that says we should prepare for war in the time of peace. So, right. So, if folks would like to get more information about what you do, they want to have further conversations with you about this topic, they might want to go into more detail.
You
How
can
would they do that?
contact me via LinkedIn. You can go to this Marcus Rasberry on LinkedIn. It's a great spot to find me. And I have a lot of friends, and recently I was just awarded the Emerging Leaders Award through AmBest. in which we're going to be celebrating me winning that award in Tampa in February. So if you're looking for me at the beginning of part of February, I'll be in Tampa. But contact me via LinkedIn, Marcus Rasberry at LinkedIn. You can find me, and I'll be more than happy to assist you with any questions or concerns that you may have, or just being able to just ask questions that you may have going on within the organization in order to improve. Currently where you're at, I'll be more than happy to assist you with that as well.
Absolutely. Well, Marcus, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. As I told you when we first met, I haven't met a whole lot of people who start talking about insurance and it sounded so interesting. So I just, you rattled off something you were talking about. Matter of fact, it was the issue about the connection between commercial and residential insurance. And I go I just kind of didn't really think about that. I mean, I guess if you had the time, maybe, but yeah, it just didn't occur to me, and that just kind of sparked the opportunity to have this conversation with you. So again, thanks very much for the work that you do and your dedication to risk and to safety. We need folks in all industry with your kind of background and interest to cause our workplaces to be safer places. So thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Your dedication and your focus to the psychology of safety and health, and also your commitment to making individuals better in their personal lives and also in their work perspective. So I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. I had a lot of fun. I love doing these and just talking to people, especially youth. I'm really passionate and big on helping our youth understand, what is risk, what is safety, and how they can get into this particular arena or field. So I'm very passionate about it because if we can get them when they're young, by the time they get older, they understand the do's and don'ts of life and how to, have a better life at home and at work. So that's my passion. That's what I do.
Absolutely. Well, if you're watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something you've heard will bring you back to a future episode. Previous episodes of this podcast can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, subscribe, and share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned and look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.